When we die, we go to a place called Sheol, or the grave, or Hades is the Greek word. Now, if you are a Christian, then you will be part of something called the first resurrection.
So, I'm going to do a multi part series on Taco's breakdown of the rosary. And to begin with part one, I want to start with what I find is his most disturbing belief: what happens to our souls after death. He didn't come out and say it, but it seems to me that Taco believes in a dogma known as soul sleep. For those of you who do not know, soul sleep is the belief that after death, the soul enters a state of unconsciousness until the final resurrection. As a Catholic, I want to respond to this idea and share what scripture and tradition actually teach about the soul state after death. Understanding soul sleep. Soul sleep is the belief that when a person dies, their soul becomes unconscious and remains in this state until the resurrection and final judgment. This view is held by certain Christian groups, such as Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses. They base this belief on several Bible verses, which I will address one by one. The first is going to be Ecclesiastes 9:5. The living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. The soul sleep argument here is that this verse is interpreted as saying that the dead have no awareness. But the Catholic argument is going to be Ecclesiastes is a wisdom book, often speaking from a human perspective about life under the sun. It does not provide doctrinal teaching about the afterlife. Other parts of the Bible clearly show the consciousness of the soul after death. First Thessalonians chapter 4, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about those who have died, so that you may not grieve as others do who have no hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have died. The soul sleep argument is going to be that the dead are described as asleep in some translations, implying unconsciousness. The Catholic response is going to be sleep is a common biblical metaphor for physical death, not for the soul's unconsciousness. Jesus himself used sleep to describe death, as in John chapter 11, but he clearly meant it figuratively. Now we're going to go to John chapter 11, 11 to 14. Jesus says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up. He then clarifies Lazarus is dead. So the soul sleep argument is going to be if death is just like sleep, it must mean unconsciousness. However, the Catholic response is going to be Jesus used sleep as a metaphor, just as he did when referring to Jairus' daughter in Mark 5. The context always clarifies that this is a figurative language. Now we're going to go to the Catholic teaching on the soul after death. The Catholic Church teaches that the soul remains conscious after death and immediately undergoes particular judgment. This is based on scripture, tradition, and the teachings of the early church fathers. So some key Bible verses that refute soul sleep is going to be Luke 16, 19 to 31, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man and Lazarus are both conscious after death, and Lazarus is comforted, and the rich man is in torment. If soul sleep were true, neither of them would be aware of this condition. Second one's going to be Luke 23:43. Jesus tells the good thief, today you will be with me in paradise. If soul sleep were true, Jesus would have said, you will be with me in paradise after the resurrection, and says he promises it that very day. Philippians 1:23, Paul desires to depart and be with Christ. Paul speaks of being with Christ immediately after death, not sleeping unconsciously until the resurrection. Revelation 6, 9, and 10, the souls of the martyred cry out. The souls of the martyrs are conscious and cry out to God, proving that the dead are aware before the resurrection. 2 Corinthians 5:8, away from the body and is at home with the Lord. This verse clearly indicates that once we die, we are with the Lord and not unconscious. Then we're going to move on to post-biblical teachings. We're going to go to St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. The early church fathers also affirm the soul remains aware after death. St. Augustine wrote, the soul, having left the body, is not asleep, but judges its own deeds, awaiting its final judgment. St. Thomas Aquinas taught, since the soul is immaterial, it continues to operate after death, retaining consciousness and intellect. Aquinas also explained that souls of the righteous experience the beatific vision, where they see God face to face immediately after death. So in final summary, soul sleep is not a biblical teaching. The verses used to support it are misinterpreted metaphors. Scripture confirms that the soul remains conscious after death and experiences either comfort or suffering before the final resurrection. Early church fathers like St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas rejected soul sleep and affirmed the consciousness of the soul. And Taco, I appreciate the discussion, and I hope this view clarifies some Catholic teachings and why we reject soul sleep. And if you want to continue this conversation, I'd be happy to do so. As always, God bless, and thank you for watching.